So she keeps looking at me, making sure we're on the same page. She has her gun up for about 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes total, just looking down the scope, waiting for an opportunity. And she finally gets one. And she looks at me one more time, and I confirm and everything else. And she takes her shot, and that deer dropped right where she stood. I mean, she didn't move 2 feet. Never expected to see an elk walk right. He was probably still 400, 500 yards away, but with your binos, it looks a lot closer. So this place was enormous, and it was just neat to see him just like stroll on by and then come back around and see him again.
Tejas. Tejas Hunt Club Podcast is the podcast for you and you and you and you. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 28 of the Tejas Hunt Club Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon and Meagan, also joined by the other host,
Meagan.
And today we're going to be talking about Megan's first guiding trip. Mm-hmm. She was a mentor on a mentored hunt. So she got to help a first-time hunter kill their first elk.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that today and get the whole backstory on that. But first, got to take care of a little business. As always, I said I was going to keep saving some things from Instagram that I found and keep talking about them. So first off, I'm going to start with the El Patron Dove Hunt video. Awesome video. If you haven't seen it, go over to the YouTube channel and watch that video. Thanks again to Tim Willis and Brandon Bredermeyer for inviting me on that trip. The podcast was good too. If you haven't, that's episode 27. So go check that one out as well. And then we just dropped a bow setup video. So Megan and I went over our bow setups for whitetail this year. Mm-hmm. So we have that video on the podcast platform and on the YouTube channel. I would suggest watching it on the YouTube channel, but listen to it also on the podcast.
Yeah.
And then our buddy Zach Vikurovich, I mentioned he was going on an elk trip in his podcast, and he shot an elk. So he sent me a message when they were out in Montana and explained to me kind of the story, but I think I'm going to try and get him on the podcast to tell the full story about that because be so cool. From the looks of it, it looked like an awesome trip. I know they were having some trouble at first finding elk, but then he finally got one. So definitely want to get him on and tell that story.
Where was he?
In Montana.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I saw the pictures.
It was awesome. And he had Montana Outdoor Imagery, I think is his handle, but his name is Mike Klingen.
Yeah.
He was photographing the whole trip. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he was on the trip with Zach, and he followed him around and filmed it and everything. Epic. So I have a feeling they're going to have a pretty good video to go along with that too.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one for sure.
So that's pretty cool. Also, speaking about elk, there have been some awesome, huge elk coming out of West Texas.
Yep.
I mean,
I've seen that too.
Up until a couple of years ago, I didn't really know that there was elk in West Texas. I mean, obviously you have them on high fence ranches and stuff like that, but these are free range elk that have come over from New Mexico, I'm guessing, and maybe possibly they were here this whole time. I think they were here this whole time, and they were just hiding out, and their numbers are growing, and there were some big bulls being killed. I know Perennial Outfitting, they killed a pretty big one. Scotty Campbell, the guys at Top of Texas, Sloan Brown, Ryan Gentry, and then Texas Hunting Resources. They killed some big bulls out in West Texas too. So shout out to those guys out there chasing those elk. Hopefully soon it's on the list.
Yeah.
I'm saving my pennies. So
we don't have to go as far as we thought maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take a West Texas raghorn probably just about over any other elk. I mean, Don't get me wrong.
It's Texas.
A big 400-something inch bull like off the res in Arizona would be cool.
Well, yeah.
But it's still it wouldn't hold a place in my heart like a West Texas.
I just want the meat, man.
Yeah, elk is
my gosh.
Delicious. But so shout out to those guys for putting down those animals and everything, and then sharing it on Instagram for me to look at and drool over. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And kind of piggybacking off that about animals that are resurging in the state of Texas. They actually caught a black bear in Uvalde the other day. If you didn't see it.
I just drove through there.
Yeah. If you didn't see it.
Sunday.
Yeah. So there was a black bear that was walking through town the other day.
Oh.
possibly on Sunday. I have to look on what day it was.
I was at a gas station in Uvalde.
Yeah, so there's a black bear running around.
That's crazy. I saw the post in
Texas
the
Parks
town.
and Wildlife, they captured and
wow.
they took off, I guess, somewhere else. They didn't kill it, I'm pretty sure, but they took it off and released it somewhere else. But pretty cool. Black bears are making a resurgence, coming back, man.
Mm-hmm.
But that one was just walking around broad daylight in the middle of town. So hopefully,
not great.
Like you said, we really don't want human black bear conflict because it's not going to be good. But I do like seeing them back on the landscape and hope they keep growing. Just out in the bush, not in the middle of town because I don't want to have to kill them for no reason. And then
they're just giant raccoons, though.
Taken care of.
They act like giant raccoons. They like getting into everything.
Yeah, pretty much. They go through trash. I mean, you can look at all the stories and stuff from like New Jersey and like on the East Coast and stuff. And I mean, they just go tear up your trash, tear up your stuff in your yard. I mean, up there, they're pretty much a nuisance just because they don't manage them well. So I know they are protected in the state of Texas, but if it does get to that point, I hope, Texas Parks and Wildlife will make decisions to where, we can, hunt them or, pay for tags to get them, and that can go back to, keeping the rest of the black bears there.
Do some research on them.
Yeah, definitely.
Get some numbers.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And on that note, also, howl.org, I'm going to keep bringing it up. If you aren't involved in it, you should be if you like hunting and fishing. There's a lot of things going on right now, and they keep you up to date and keep me up to date on ways that we can do actions to, stop these things from happening. So I know right now Colorado is trying to put a ban on all cat and mountain lion and bobcat hunting, which doesn't make sense. I guess they're just following California's lead in that, and we can see the result of people's pets getting nabbed,
disappearing,
snabbed, and swapped.
Snabbed.
I guess I made that one up. But so there are some things that we can do about that, and Hal's figuring all that out. So subscribe to their newsletter, follow them on Instagram. We'll be sharing their stuff on Tejas Hunt Club's page, so you can keep update on there. But like I said, the email is going to be the best way. They send you actions to do. Basically, you just log into the Action Den. They'll have a letter typed out to the respective, representatives and people that need to read the letter, and you just basically fill in your name. I read the letter to see what they're actually saying, and I suggest you all do that also, not reading the terms and conditions of things. Yeah. So, but just check that out, sign up for it, and then go through the Action Den. Leading into this hunt with that Meagan went on, we all know that bow season and whitetail season started, and also Texas Buck Registry. They've been showing a bunch of bucks that have been entered into that, and hopefully, you'll enter one in there too. It's a great resource to see where all the different sizes and age class and stuff that are happening around the state of Texas. Tom Paul Glazer started it. Definitely check out their Instagram page. And then if you shoot a buck this year, get it registered on the Texas Buck Registry. I'll give a shout out to Will German. He shot a pretty big buck, and he has shared it on the story today. It was like 178 and some change. He had it on Texas Buck Registry. So follow their Instagram page. I know they're on Facebook as well. But get your buck entered in to the Texas Buck Registry.
It's just cool for me to see, like, that's in the county we hunt in, or like that's a county that, like, so-and-so hunts in. Like, free range, low fence deer that are just hanging out around where we hunt. It's pretty cool.
Yep. And then, you can enter high fence deer in there too.
Absolutely. There's different categories.
Yep. Different categories. But
for me, I guess right now we're hunting low fence. And so for me, I'm always excited to see like what the potential
that there's
is.
Always like something out there that can be found. Yeah.
Hidden away.
Yeah. Shackelford County, as always, has some of the biggest deer that I've seen come out, and they just keep piling them out, man. I mean, they've already shown probably 6 or 7 on Texas Buck Registry already that are 160 plus. So Shackelford County, shout out to y'all. Management. Y'all are raising some big deer for sure. So speaking of deer, Meagan, give us a little story on how you got involved also in this and how your first mentored hunt went.
So this past weekend, I went down to La Pryor, Texas. Actually, that's probably just the closest town to where we were on this property. But it was a joint effort between Stewards of the Wild and the Texas Wildlife Association. So Brandon and I both have a dual membership through those organizations. And we basically had been interested in Stewards of the Wild at the beginning because of the mentored opportunities that they had. And so we wanted to be able to mentor young hunters and also adult hunters that just are inexperienced and are excited to get out in the outdoors. So it was a lot of fun. We were very interested in it, and this was my first opportunity to go on one of these trips. As Brandon mentioned, it was my very first time as an independent guide / mentor. So I was a little bit intimidated at the beginning, not gonna lie. I knew that I needed to bring everything that was needed. So my blind bag, my camera gear, if I was allowed to use it, which I was, which was a whole nother side of the story. I'm so excited. And then also I had my rangefinder, my binos, like my pistol, a couple of different things I needed to keep with me while I was on the property. And so, yeah, it was a little intimidating, but I also was very excited about the opportunity. And to add to it, before I even begin the story, there was a call that I received from Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation, and they are doing a story in their magazine about the adult learn to hunt, adult mentored hunt programs that are between Stewards of the Wild and Texas Wildlife Association. So she called me and she said, do you mind if I shadow you on your trip with your mentee and kind of write a story about y'all's journey together and feature you guys in this article? So that in itself was really exciting to me. And I was very pumped to get all my things packed. And I even posted about how excited I was and did a whole video of all my gear on Instagram if you haven't seen that. Got up super early on Friday morning to make the drive to La Prairie from our new house in the Hill Country. And it was about a 3-hour drive, so it wasn't horrible, but I did stop in San Antonio and make time for a visit to Black Rifle Coffee Company on National Coffee Day of all days. And so I went into their store for the first time. I've drank their coffee for a few years now. I love their products. And it was cool to go into one of their shops, and it was a really cool experience. I'll put some footage in that on my Instagram as well, and then we'll probably make a YouTube video as well. But I stopped in San Antonio and got a couple things, and then made the rest of the trip down to La Prairie and met up with Matt Hughes, Katie Spurgeon, and all of the mentors, volunteers, and mentees before we headed to the ranch. Meeting my mentee for the first time was super exciting. It turns out she is actually from the town that we live in now. She will be part of the same chapter that we're going to be part of in Austin, which is really exciting for Stewards of the Wild. And she is also an Aggie. So lots of things that we had in common. Very cool to hit it off with her at the very beginning. We drove to the ranch in a caravan, and as soon as we got there, we had a little bit of a break to unpack all of our things, and then it was off to range time that afternoon. So we want to make sure that all of the mentees are comfortable with their guns, they feel safe with the guns they're using for the weekend, they're familiar with how to use them, they have the right ammo, all of the good things, hearing protection, eye protection. Make sure we checked off all those things on the list, and it was just everybody was very prepared, have everything they need, so it ran very smoothly. Came home, and you're going to hear me mention a lot of different recipes that Matt put together for us this weekend, because he went over the top when it comes to incorporating not only amazing recipes, but venison and different wild game into his recipes. So that first night we had venison carne asada empanadas, and I was able to help make them. And that was really cool to learn how to do that. And I did that with my mentee next to me, kind of like talked about the venison meat and everything else. And we went to bed kind of early that night. We did some introductions during dinner, but we all knew we were very excited to get up early the next morning for our first hunt on Saturday morning. So Saturday morning, I wake up at about 5:15 to have some coffee. We left camp, I believe, about 6:30 to get out to the blind by about 6:45. And on the way on the first morning, we, packed up all of our gear, made sure we had everything. Once we got to the blind, we did take a couple pictures just leading up to, walking up the ramp and the sunrise. It was beautiful. So the Texas Parks and Wildlife photographer was out there, Earl, and he was doing a fantastic job. And so we sat in the blind. We saw not only a deer right in front of us very quickly after sitting in the blind, we saw an aoudad. We saw an elk, a nice bull elk. We also saw a coyote, a roadrunner, and a couple other different things, and just like no deer that really came within shooting distance that were shooters and what we were looking for. So really just an awesome morning out in the outdoors that first morning, seeing things, hearing things. I never expected to see an elk walk right. He was probably still 400, 500 yards away, but with your binos, it looks a lot closer. So it was really cool to see him. He didn't bugle or anything. I was sitting there waiting for him to bugle, but it was really exciting just to see one. And I've seen him, in captivity, but at the same time, this place was enormous. And it was just neat to see him just like stroll on by and then come back around and see him again. Very cool moment for all of us. And it was just a nice, enjoyable wildlife watching experience, but didn't take a deer that morning. We still had 2 hunts to go, so it was definitely fine. She felt good. She was able to look at some of the deer through her scope and get comfortable doing that. So I told her, I just said, pull up your rifle, leave your bolt open, look down that scope, and just make sure that A, you're comfortable sitting where you're sitting, and B, you're used to looking at these animals and putting your crosshairs on them, just practicing looking through the scope. And we headed back to the main camp to basically see what everybody else had done that morning. And then also we have part of the program is cleaning and basically getting your animal ready for the processor before you leave, and learning about all the different cuts of meat, learning about, ways to store them, ways to get them processed, different cuts that you can get done at your processor, depending on where you go. And so it's just all the way full circle from harvesting the animal all the way through putting it on your table. That's just part of the experience. And I really enjoyed that. So the first morning coming back and seeing that people had been so successful was really exciting. And then I did shoot some footage of the other mentees and mentors working on their animals. We also had the most amazing breakfast. Like I said, I'm going to mention this a lot about Matt's cooking. But we watched them and then we went inside to have breakfast and wash our hands. And it's called the McWild breakfast sandwich. And it is amazing. It is an amazing breakfast sandwich. So it's definitely one of the recipes that we were able to take away from that, that I'm putting on my list, is the McWild breakfast sandwich. Had breakfast. And then of course, we had a little bit of a break and we watched some Aggie football and kind of just chilled out around camp. And then, some of us took a nap just because we've been up since, like I said, 5:15 that morning. And then before we headed back out, Matt had lunch, or a late lunch, which was, I believe, Axis venison Italian sliders with coleslaw, and they were to die for. They were so good on the little Hawaiian buns. They were amazing. And we all headed out to our evening hunt at about 4:30, 4:45-ish. Saturday evening was quite a bit slower than Saturday morning. We did see deer, but it was basically a bachelor group of bucks that we were not out to get bucks. We were there to get a doe. So it was cool watching them, interact with each other. And we saw a couple different does like off in the distance and a couple bucks in the distance, but nothing even came close, and definitely wasn't as exciting as seeing, the elk and the aoudad and everything the morning before. But we did have the opportunity at I think we had 2 or 3 minutes left in the shooting time that we were allowed. And there were four does that walked out, and 2 of them were mature. And basically there was 2 different senderos, one going this way and one going that way, onto basically 2:00 and 11:00. And they walked across the 2:00 right side. And we were like, oh, if they come out on the other side, we may have a chance at these does. And so they step out, but I mean, at this point, I think just the fact that she knew we only had a couple minutes left really put a lot of pressure on her, and it was very rushed. And basically, what I believe, she shot right over the back of her. Didn't injure a deer is the good news. I think it did. We came down from that blind a little bit shaken up. All of us were just like, man, now we only have one more hunt, and it's just a little bit discouraging when you only have one more hunt that next morning. But at the same time, it was such a good time to process what had happened and talk about how she felt about it and things like that. That was just part of it. And really talking through that, and just did some lessons learned before, heading back to camp. So again, we get back to camp, and there are some mentees who were successful that evening as well. Matt had already texted the group saying, everybody skin your deer, gut your deer, but as far as breaking them down, let's put them in the refrigerator and enjoy dinner, because he had made venison spring rolls and a venison pad thai as well. So like I said, just over the top. Matt did a wonderful job on all of the meals. This was our last big meal, and it was just delicious. And then we definitely had an interesting evening playing some dice games. I can't even remember the name of the dice game, so you'll have to ask Matt about that. But playing dice games, I've never heard of it before, but it was so fun and so competitive, obviously. But just enjoyed a couple beverages around each other, played dice, stayed up maybe a little bit too late for getting up the next morning. But, it was a lot of fun, and we had quite a few, laughed together and had a lot of like-minded people in the same place, just having a really good time outdoors, and just getting to know different people from different areas and different backgrounds and lifestyles. So it was definitely a very fun evening. I enjoyed that part of the trip probably the most, outside of, the hunt, the successful hunt that we had. But it was a lot of fun, and I was very excited going into Sunday morning. We were just telling everybody that we were building suspense. That's all we were doing, just building the suspense. So we had a lot of pep talks that night and talked about, what she was expecting and hopefully what she's excited for the next morning. So it was definitely a good night. So Sunday morning, the pressure is on. We've already been told that the night before, Matt broke it out and said that we have until 9 a.m. To shoot. And so at 9 a.m., everybody's coming in because we had to clean out camp and be off the property by a certain time. And so we had basically 2 hours. We left camp at 6:45 and got to the blind around 7. So the first thing we saw was a pretty nice buck, and there was a doe hanging out with him, but she was pretty young, a little bit smaller, and so we were going to try to see what else was going to come out that morning. It rolled around to about 8 o'clock, and at this point, we know we only have an hour left, and we still haven't really seen anything. And as soon as we start talking about it a little bit and whispering about it, I look over and there's about 5 does that are walking up. I think 5 or 6 does that are walking up, and so basically we looked at him, and there's 2 younger yearlings, fawns yearlings, and there's about 6 does. And one of them is healthier than the others. She's a little bit bigger than the others. And so we're like, okay, that's our gal. And so I basically was like, okay, make sure that we're looking at the same doe. Like, is she's more gray than the other ones, and making sure that at all times she was aiming at the correct animal. And so that was a challenge in itself, because you have hearing protection on, you're trying to whisper. It's just one of those things, lots of hand signals, but then you actually have to take your hearing protection out just for a second to hear what they're saying. And anyway, so she keeps looking at me, making sure we're on the same page. She has her gun up for about 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes total, just looking down the scope, waiting for an opportunity. And she finally gets one. And she looks at me one more time, and I confirm and everything else. And she takes her shot, and that deer dropped right where she stood. I mean, she didn't move 2 feet one way or the other. She was basically in awe about it. My mentee, her mouth was wide open, and she just couldn't believe she had just done that. And, later she told me that she wasn't sure how she was going to feel about it. And she just was so happy that she was thrilled and happy and proud, and that she had all the positive feelings about the situation and about the experience, the thing that she had just done. So, I mean, it was literally, we just built in suspense, baby. And it was a lot of fun at the end of the day. And we went back to camp, and we only had about an hour to clean her animal and get everything prepared and documented. And we got it done with the help of Carlos, who was the ranch manager. And he was awesome, very knowledgeable. He cared a lot about our experience out there. And he also was helping us a lot with breaking down the deer and teaching us some tricks and hacks about what he's learned through the years. So a lot of fun there. And, we wrapped things up with some breakfast tacos, and then took our group picture, and all of us were headed home. It just seems like the whole weekend went by, super quickly. And even though we had so much fun, I can't wait for the next one. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunities to make an impact on a future, hopefully future generations. At this point, I think that we are the younger side of conservation minded folks, and we still have a lot to learn. But at the same time, I mean, just having the want and the passion to come out and take our time to do this together. And it's just something that brings us closer. And I really enjoy this group of people, and it's been a lot of fun spending time with them. So thank you, Matt and Katie, again. Can't thank you enough for all that you do and what you've provided here, and everything that you facilitate with this program, with Stewards of the Wild and with Texas Wildlife Association. And so until next time, guys, thanks for listening. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll see a lot of these stories being told through our videos on YouTube, and then also on Instagram. Mine is Meagan Elise TX. Again, thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate y'all's support, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.